Pretty good.
Stuff that I need to get to.
Yeah, I just need to pass it.
So is there any public comment? Yes.
So I have one thing that, I want to bring to your guys' attention, especially since we're gonna start talking about budgets, is, the city water and sewage bills. The total yearly increase for us is $17,000, went from about $2,000 a year to 19. So, it's gonna hit us extremely hard. I don't know what we're gonna do. Because we're metered, we fall on their meter usage. We use a lot of water over there. We've talked about it, there's really no way to, how we would cut back or keep inmates from showering or flushing the toilet, or, you know, you can't really do that. So, so it's gonna be a huge issue for us. I don't know where we're gonna come up with that, whether we take a chance in trying to raise our jail rates, and possibly losing inmates, or somehow look at the city contract and see if we can put some sort of utilities in our contract as well, because that currently really isn't in there. But one big issue I thought I'd let you guys know about. We redid the math. I think Debbie might help Mike as well, or Michelle, and it's correct. The bill is $1,600 a month, so.
And what she looked like she found too is that where the other departments that we cover lowered a little bit, that amount, it seems like they dumped on you guys. So we're not sure there too,
Well,
if that was inaccurate.
there was one bill that was incorrect, and then Mike said this one is correct. He checked the meter and all that.
And then last month it was like 30,000 or something.
Yeah, that one was the wrong one, so, it's
Okay.
like 198,000 gallons of water a month is what we go through over there, which, I don't know, you got 46 people live there, so, just so you guys know. Not good.
Yeah.
Drill a well.
Have to ship some water in or something, I don't know what we're gonna do, but. So, if we weren't metered, if you went off of their, not metered, scale, it probably went up to about $600 a month, so another $400 increase, but we're required to be metered, so we're kind of stuck with that, but I will bring it to the attention of city council, but I don't know if they're gonna be able to cut us a break and not cut other people breaks, because I know it's been an issue for some businesses and stuff in town, so. And that's all I have for public comment.
Thanks, Brandon. So before we go to the working meeting, the deed for Big Sky Drive, the decision on Big Sky Drive.
Oh, yes. How about that?
So are we going to, we were waiting for the transfer of deed and stuff, right? Is that what we were waiting for?
Correct, vote to do so, yeah.
So, I guess we can vote to abandon that, even though we have to do a resolution, so we can't really do a resolution without a public hearing.
Do we have to do the resolution to deed the property?
I would, yes, you need to get the petition to abandon, I haven't received that yet, that has to be the resolution, and I would do those before I do a deed. You want that stuff in the right order.
So we did the resolution
Right.
to abandon the road, and Nicole was hunting down the original.
Yes, but you haven't, you voted to do that, but you have not held a hearing on the resolution itself. You have not adopted the resolution, because you have to have a hearing before you can do a resolution.
Okay, so we did have a hearing, but we didn't have the resolution at
Correct,
hand.
correct.
Therefore, you're saying we should redo it just to make sure that that's
Well, you need
covered.
you need to have a hearing on the resolution, because you made the decision, but there needs to be a resolution too. And I feel strongly we should have the petition to abandon resolution, both documented in the clerk and recorder's office before the deed is actually issued.
Agree.
I,
I agree.
I don't have any problem with you making this decision that, yeah, we will deed this, I don't have any problem with that. We need to get stuff done in the right order.
Yeah, and that should have been done, I assumed it was gonna be at the meeting. I feel like we just didn't have a piece of paper, we did it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we should probably get that done.
We'll table that until the 25th. I gave the resolution to Nicole, she's gonna have it put in the paper, so it'll be in the paper this week and next week, so by the 25th, I'll have the parts and be ready to go. So I'll tell her she needs to have the petition, the resolution, the deed, everything here for that day.
Well, the petition can come into our office, it can come in and get recorded. I need that document.
Okay.
The other thing we asked for was some documentation from Hyman's that
That's right.
discuss that they would not have to change their mind in the future on that road.
So, and I don't know where to go with that.
I would hope that
That'll give you,
Word that would
that,
work with
yeah,
them on
that gives you a couple weeks to get that
Mhm.
affirmation too.
Yeah. So we would have that in hand with this.
But whenever you get that original petition to abandon to my office, I'll get that on record. And then we can go on with the rest of it.
Yes, Jen?
Real quick question, Mr. Chairman. Has the issue of the underlying property ownership in the township been resolved? Or is that still kind of on the table, which will be heard on the 25th through the resolution?
That's what we're taking care of with the deed and the resolution.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, now we'll move on to our working meeting.
So, do you need me here for the working meeting? How about just give a jingle if you need me back down here for something? Okay.
Actually, could you hang on just a second? We'll be right back. We have a letter connected with our other public hearing, and I think it just needed.
Pass this out while we're reading. The first one is our revenue to actuals, so you kind of see how we're sitting with our revenues. And I had some writing because I was looking at last year's where we're sitting, so the last page is comparing last year where we were at. And this is the expenditure versus actuals where we're sitting.
Thank you.
So the estimated revenue, budget revenue that actually carried out what was estimated last budget, they expected to receive, is that right?
Yeah, the estimated revenue is what we put in our budget prep. Everybody said, this is what I expect to get. And then what we've received so far and what we have left to get. Some of this will change because when you look at like the last page, like the retirement, some of those are our trust and agency accounts. Those didn't get any budget revenues received, so that will change some of the estimated revenues when I give those revenue receiving authority.
So that's why at this point, it looks like it's a big negative. because of that.
But negative in revenues is a good thing because it says you've received more than you budgeted. So if we budgeted 0 revenues and we've got
Okay.
263,000, that's more than we budgeted.
Okay.
So, but the trust and agencies are hard because they don't give us any numbers to work with. So I have to go in later and
Sure.
play with those and give authority. We usually don't include them because it doesn't really, it's not really our money. But Doug has to manage it when he gets the taxes in and disperse it to those agencies. So it kind of skews some of our actual numbers.
So Mike, I have a letter here. Do you want to address this when we're done with the budget and ask Ann to come back, or address it now and then let Ann go?
Let's address it now.
All right, so this is an email that just came in. Brian's been working with Adam Gill, who's with Montana Facility Finance something, a association maybe? Anyway, I'll let you read it and we can discuss it. So if you guys are good with this, what we can do is put a letter on letterhead and sign it, we should vote. But what I like is it voids any cost to the county or liability. Adam Gill, we've worked with him a lot, he knows his stuff, he's smart.
Well, the other thing too is we kind of help set a precedence and set a stage for future things to come.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's also good for the county.
I do too, yeah. It sends a message.
That, the other thing is, I don't have a whole lot of experience in this arena.
None.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
I think this is probably the direction we could go.
yeah, I agree. So, how about I will move that we move forward with drafting a letter as proposed to Adam Gill regarding him taking the lead on our behalf for the industrial development bonds.
And then after we do that, I'm sure he'll probably come and make his presentation.
Adam?
How
Yeah.
that would work, and then, that would be able to make the financials go away.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that'll be part of the process. It might even be a meeting we have at Wheatland, so those folks are aware of what the next steps are in the process.
And I'll second the motion that we have, who is it, Montana?
Facility finance.
Yeah. Montana Facility Finance, which will take the lead on engaging in these bonds.
Motion is made and seconded to allow Montana Facility Finance to move forward to handle the industrial development bonds through Adam Gill for the Wheaton Brewing production. Further discussion? Seeing none, take a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Thanks, Ann. All right. Thanks. Would you like to come up here and sit with us
Sure.
a little bit closer?
I sent you guys a copy last night of this,
PowerPoint?
thank you,
Yeah.
you're welcome. Of the last budget training we went through, it was in Butte, that local government services has been starting to put on. When I first started, we didn't have any training, it was just kind of shoot from the hip and learn as we go. So they've been working with Mako, and they put these little presentations together. And it basically says how, from beginning to end, to create a budget, why we do it, what statutes guide us, and all sorts of little wisdom. So I'm waiting for them to have another training. We went to another one. You guys got that, something similar when you went to elected officials conference. But they had a little different view, more from a commissioner's perspective. I think they have some neat stuff in it. Laura gave me a copy of hers. And it has some good stuff in it. This, I think, goes into a little more detail that, so you know what I'm expected, what Doug has to do to make this all happen. So it's got some good stuff, on how to do it, and why I do what I do. If you ever have questions, you want to look at it, that's where we get our rules on, you don't want to overspend, because you could be personally liable as an elected official or a governing body, that's how they rephrase it. Kind of open to interpretation. Not necessarily just elected officials was the take on it, you could be a department head. So it's kind of important if you don't want to pay for it, you don't want to overspend. So that's why you hear some of us get very picky, don't overspend, because we don't want to put somebody in the position of that being enforced. And And it just talks about how we do, how the revenues come about and how you go about setting your tax levies and what they're for and what you can do. If you have questions after you get it, look at it, let me know. Take too long, I can go through it.
One question that I have that just popped into my head is, if something is done, two different things come to mind. So we have a board that violates the code of ethics. Say they give a $100 bill to every member for serving on that board. Code of ethics says you cannot receive more than 50. And we sign off on that claim. Are we as commissioners liable for allowing that violation of the code of ethics? Is my first question. And then my second question is if a department head or elected official overspends their fund and we allow it to happen, are we liable for that? If we sign off on the claim for either of those, statute says that the elected official or the department head is liable. Does that mean we are as well for allowing it?
I would say, yeah.
Would you follow up with DOA on that, or whoever your contacts are? Maybe Bob.
I would say Bob might be the best one at this point. If not, I'll just get ahold of somebody at Mako. That might be something, Eric Bryson.
And I think we need,
Clarified.
yeah, and maybe something in writing. We seem to have some confusing answers.
I know Harold was kind of vague when we talked about some of this stuff, and I don't know if it's because it could be interpretation by case.
I disagree. I found Harold to be quite, when he put it in writing, to be quite clear. I quoted the statutes. But yeah, talking to him kind of helped you build a clock when you ask the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you would look up those two things and get back to us on that, that would be helpful, I think. Because the budget is our responsibility. And that means all money spent is our responsibility. That's in statute. So, all right, that's all I had on that. So
I thought
thanks.
about that, so yeah.
I haven't either.
That was a very good question. Okay. So, Michelle's out sick today. She has something she wanted to share, so I'm trying to make sure I got them. Some things that we, like from her perspective, as we move towards Blackfoot, we haven't seen anything yet. Contractual cost, where are we paying for it? What's the monthly bill gonna be? As we continue to get bills, we're concerned that we could go over budget in some of that, but we don't know what the costs we're looking at. So that was one thing she's concerned with, as she pays claims. What kind of costs are we looking at with this Blackfoot switch? And we haven't seen contracts where they would delineate our initial install fees or monthly rates. This is what we cover. Kind of like when we had Clarify, they said it's going to cost this much to put it in, and then here's your monthly cost to provide it. You're our Gold Star member, so everything's under warranty. You don't have a charge when you come in for repairs other than the materials, things of that nature. And we're kind of concerned because when she puts in claims, she gets notices that says somebody's overspent this line, and so kind of between the two of us, we're trying to keep an eye on stuff.
Sure.
For the most part, in looking at the expenditure for everybody, as of the end of January, we should be at 58%. be on target or less of our expenditures. And most everybody is there. When you look at the, whether you wanna look by account or fund, like general fund, you can look by account. See what individual departments are doing.
I think we should probably take this fairly slow, page by page, just because this is, Daryl, I know you worked in
Yeah.
county government, but probably first time diving into an overview. We generally, or we used to review the budget every quarter, and so this is our first review of the budget since adopting it. So this should be fairly in-depth. Two of the things coming out of the commissioner's budget this year that we are gonna have to cover is a couple of lawsuits, wins against a number of employees and the commission, Dr. Eaton and HR, and then also the union unfair labor practice. We don't have any cushion here, so that's probably all gonna come from PILT, just to balance. So we're at 58% bottom line. It's probably gonna go over. Also, we did not budget for Franklin's mileage claims. And so that's also going to be over. So our 58% probably is not real accurate. Am I missing anything?
Training, we're probably over already. I don't know if there's gonna be any more trainings the rest of this year that you have to pay for. We only budgeted 350, and we spent 600.
Yeah.
Well, that's another one. And typically, initial budget amendments, you guys don't have one, but like down on the justice court, we're looking at operating supplies, 220. He didn't budget anything. So typically, when I first do a budget amendment, because he doesn't have spending authority there, to cover that, to give spending authority without changing their overall budget, so it stays the same, is I take a look at one of their line items they haven't hardly spent anything from, and take it from there to give it spending authority. Once it has spending authority, we're okay. It's just for those few that we don't, and then that way it doesn't change the original from the current appropriations. That comes later as additional revenues come in or don't, when we make changes. So like for you guys going over $250 isn't really a big deal, but it's something to keep in mind as we move forward.
Yeah.
Can't think of anything else for you guys.
All right. So under 58% at this point is a little bit high on the spending side.
So if you're under 58%, you're good because you've only
Okay.
spent, you shouldn't have spent, if you spent any more than 58%, we kind of need to know why. Is it a one-time expense? Did you spend more on something that you didn't think would cost that much? What happened?
Okay.
Or did you all, like the fair they spend theirs all at the beginning of August, the fair and stuff, and then they kind of do nothing most of the rest of the year. So theirs can kind of be skewed because the biggest part of the expense hits first thing right at the beginning of the fiscal year. And then balances hopefully out as the year progresses by not having much more spending. That's the principle.
Finance looks good.
We've got a little one more over.
Data processing looks good. So the funds, finance and accounting, that would be Debbie and Michelle. Data processing, elections, that would be Doug.
Well, no, data processing
Isn't
is
it?
kind of everybody
Oh,
because it covers all of our equipment, our contracts for like Black Mountain software, our computer software, his election and services that they report to,
Okay.
the contracted service, Black Mountain, GIS, Connect, for our actual access to the data.
Okay.
Is where that comes from.
Will be Blackfoot too in the future then?
That's where
Okay.
Blackfoot's services are gonna go. That's why we were kind of, we're halfway through the year, so depending on when one contract ends and one begins, we're hoping there isn't overlap between the two,
Sure, sure.
because that'll wreck that budget.
Hoping for a wash.
Yeah. But anyhow, elections are Doug's. Audit is separate, which is that financial services, which is mine, the 410532. And something else too, anytime an employee quits, that's under my budget. So like if the sheriff's office loses a control officer, we pay them out their accruals, but then my employee benefit, because we have to budget for it, replaces it so it doesn't skew their budget for their wages and salaries.
And where is that at?
That's under the 410510 object, or account, and it's object 130, under finance,
Okay.
first page. And this reflects everybody that's left so far this year. that I've had to pay out. The most recent one, probably the most one, was Joyce. And then there was a couple in the sheriff's office, a control and a couple, a deputy. And it was Joyce, and then the health clinic clerk.
Is that like sick leave, that kind of stuff, they
Mhm.
have crew?
Yep, that's their payout of their accruals.
Okay.
They get 25% of their sick accruals
Mhm.
and 100% of their vacation and comp time if they have it. That's why we kind of encourage, that's why the policy on keeping comp time down is important, because it's a liability to the county.
Can I, John, am I allowed to talk a little bit here? I didn't know if it was that kind. I just wonder if that's something that, maybe we need to look at, you know, should you be budgeting for that, because, or should we be doing vacancy savings,
You'll,
until that money's used up, you know what I mean?
well, you kind of get the savings anyway, but the county is legally obligated to pay those accruals,
Okay.
not you. It's an
Okay.
obligation to the county, so that's why I have to account for it, but rather than skew your budget, because you're not gonna know when an employee quits,
Yeah,
terminates, is killed, and you have to pay those benefits.
yeah,
You're not gonna know, but the county's on the hook for it when you go to our finance records, that's on our books as a liability
okay,
versus an asset. It doesn't affect monetary wise other than when the employee leaves and they get that as
yeah.
paid out of wages owed to them.
I mean,
Your
I
savings is-
appreciate that very much, that's for sure, but I didn't know if it would work better for you if we, you know, okay, what was that person's payout, and what does that, you know, compute into hourly, and this is how long the position needs to be open for before we can hire to make up for those wages, or is it
It's-
better this way?
It's better this way,
Okay,
because otherwise you would have to try to keep track of, but if you need somebody, you don't want your hands tied because this person got a $5,000 payout.
yeah,
That's half, 3 months. You don't want to hold off on that when you need somebody.
yeah,
So it's just to cover the liability on the books, so it doesn't impact your ability to do business.
okay. I mean, that's good to know, because I've been kind of leaving positions open for a little bit to then fill those, to have some of that, but. I
But
guess-
in theory, had that person stayed all year, those funds were available to you in your budget
Okay,
all year. So anything you don't spend, even a month's worth, is a savings to you.
okay,
So, and that's just probably typically how long it takes. Even if you posted it right away and
Yeah.
hired an interview, a month is probably the minimum savings. So it's kind of up to you. What you need is more important than what,
yeah,
because that was another question, something that we were looking at when we're looking at reports. Unfortunately, your control deputies and detention are at or more than 80% of your overtime budget. So that's,
yeah,
and we tried,
yeah.
but see, circumstances have affected that for you, and you haven't had a choice, so that's, we don't want that to happen.
Thank you.
Sure. Doug's office is doing pretty good, he's at 51%. And the attorney's office is doing okay, because they're at 56 overall, so that's good. Maintenance, he's at 48, he tries really hard to keep it down, and he's doing good, he's only spent 48% of his budget.
He keeps cutting every year and then having savings every year. I'm not sure how the two married up together, but he does pretty phenomenal.
Like some people, they're workaholics. He hardly takes time off. Does it all himself. This central communications one is a new one. It has to do with some radios, I think. Was that something the commission was paying for something? Michelle said something about it, and I didn't.
No, there was no original appropriation, so there shouldn't be for, if
So
it's
it's
for
something that happened
radios.
after budget. God, what was it? Communications of some kind, something conky. I was gonna get detail and I didn't get that.
Didn't the ambulance do that? That would be under ambulance. The ambulance got radios, batteries.
They have their own fund, so it
They
should
have
be
their own
under the
fund.
general fund. DES is under general fund. Everybody else should have a fund though.
So
maybe.
I gotta dig a little more into
Is
that.
this the in-house internet stuff?
Could it be that, the Wi-Fi? That was gonna be paid for from savings from extension, but could it appear here?
If that's where we set it up, I don't remember setting that account up.
Would you look into that?
So I needed to look into it, but I wanted to check and see. Michelle kind of thought she remembers. I mean, if it's part of our electronic and our data accessibility, data processing is where we typically can put that. So that's why I'm not
It shows
sure.
money in it. Yeah, if you would find out what that is, that'd be great.
Because, you know, sometimes Michelle gets claims because people have put accounts on there. And as long as it's not one I have to actually add out of the bars and it's already in the accounts, I don't necessarily see these, so.
And that would be where the budget amendment comes in.
Or if
Then you
it's, well, in theory, if it was set up wrong or processed wrong, you don't have to have that as budget amendment because it was done
Okay.
wrong. I can just journal it and put it where it needs to go.
Nice, all right.
But that's
So
where
there's
some
two
of this,
mechanisms to take care of something like that.
and that's where these zero appropriations catch my eye. Is if we didn't, why not? And like here, it's a whole new fund, or a whole new account within the general fund. So why did we do that?
Okay,
Usually I remember when someone says I need a new one, and I don't remember this one.
it's fine, we can look it
But
up.
we want to check.
So juvenile probation, wasn't that gonna go to Perks?
Yeah,
Justice of the
this, and this is, I'm not sure why he still has money budgeted in here, but the work comp one, when I did the work comp report this quarter, I didn't get the volunteer roster changed to his, so that's a journal that I
So
have to do.
all of this will be put back?
Yeah, and these are
into
just
that account?
budgeted, but nothing's been spent. Just the work comp has been spent.
I don't think anything should have been budgeted.
I think it was just carryover
Oh, okay,
at the last minute,
okay,
and he didn't get it turned in to take out, and I missed it.
okay, so we'll just need to.
So that just,
that
yeah, that just
amendment?
needs an amendment
Okay.
because it's, to give it zero spending authority account not used.
Okay. We used to have somebody that did that position, but Kirk suggested he would, so that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
And what it is probation for juveniles, is what it says.
And Ed usually is the one that, if he goes to training or anything that spends money out of that, and that's been set up for years. He goes to some training about once a year, so you might see some travel and training. In that budget, that's why there's nothing spent, because he hasn't done any of that yet. Honky's a little over, but he's on a different fiscal year, so some of that kinda hard to,
He's pretty close
but
though.
he's close.
Yeah.
He's usually pretty good, because our fiscal year starts in July, his doesn't start till October. So it always looks like he's a negative, but he's not, because he's got carryover in his account that he has to spend where we're starting the new year. So it skews things on our end, but it doesn't for DES.
Usually ends the year with a little extra, so it's, we look at the number and it's, oh, well, this is Mike, he does really good, not to
He does
worry about
too.
it. Public Works Administration, is that an error too?
That is, that's Mary's account, but when Michelle, we're having some struggles with some of her office supplies and things that are just general and not really anything specific, so Michelle thought, we need to put it under general fund. I'm not so sure I agree. So that's Mary's account, that's something Mary has spent for file folders, office supplies that she has here, but not necessarily anything specific to roads, solid waste. So I need to talk with Mary on that one.
Okay.
But that one's a simple fix, to put it under one of those other, as one of her other funds instead of general fund.
I would say if she wants to do something like this, that what I would like to see is a little money shaved off of each department to go in to fund this, but the general fund shouldn't fund it.
This is one of those afterthoughts, after
Sure.
budget, we got her started.
Sure.
So that's where she's like, well, I think it should come out of here, so she said it. But we start agree.
Okay.
So I just need to talk with Mary some more, because she's still learning.
Yeah,
There's still a
absolutely.
lot, and trying to figure out where some of this needs to go.
And Mary's doing a bang-up job. She didn't have a lot of guidance from us, so.
Well, she just jumped into the fire and is trying
Right.
to take and go and learn as she goes. You know, those are some of those, there's some things that I need to, going through this process, that I need to share with her. One of them being, we haven't got there yet, but a lot of the fuel and equipment usage for the road can be charged to the gas tax, and she was charging it to the road budget. So that's where we're gonna make some changes to charge it to that, because that's more appropriate there, which then doesn't overburden her regular road budget. But we have to sit and talk with her so she's aware of that, because she doesn't charge hardly anything to the gas tax.
And the gas tax, we did a resolution stating that would be spent on.
Well, that's the second one, that's the BARSA, that's the additional
Oh,
tax.
yeah.
This is the regular gas appropriation tax
Oh,
for
okay.
the road department and the road miles they maintain, they get a
Yeah.
tax. And that's what that money's for, is
The
to
road
spend.
tax.
It's the road tax, where Dana
Okay.
could spend, well, it's not Dana, Mary, for use maintaining the roads. So it goes for the fuel, some of the equipment that they use to grade the roads, things of that nature. So there were some expenses that she put under road that really should have been put under the gas appropriation tax. So we've just journaled it to put it in there, and when I get a chance to talk with her, I get to explain that to her,
Okay.
so that she knows, because I don't know if she totally understands. And of course, she's busy, so she's been trying not to bog us. Public health,
So operating supplies?
yeah, that's something I gotta,
Be working with.
vaccines. And I know like last year, she charged all her vaccines to general health, but then some of them could have been charged to MCH, immunization, bioterrorism. So she didn't go over budget. Well, last year she budgeted more, but she budgeted less this year. So I'm not sure where what's going on here.
Okay.
I don't know if we're doing that with her needs, that she's another person that we need to sit down and have a visit with.
Okay.
And now that they're shutting WIC down, we have to sit together, because that's gonna change how all the wages were distributed. And so that will need an amendment. Revenues, that lost revenue, if we're not gonna get it, we've got to adjust that. So she's gonna be my project again this year.
All right. Her first year with us, she cut her budget by $45,000. Might have been a bit too much. So that's the other thing that plays in the back of my mind looking at the numbers.
And then the Board of Health is the public health regs and inspections. This is over, I think, because when we budgeted, It was only supposed to be like Janaea once a month for the Board of Health, 2-3 hours, and I think she's doing more, so it's over. I don't think she's doing much for the planning like we had budgeted for, so that is possibly one, if she's gonna do more Board of Health and less for planning, we'll have to take some of what we had for planning for Janaea's time to go back into the Board of Health one.
And since this is new, that position,
Mhm.
this gives us an opportunity to see where the hours needed. So that's good, gives us a tool.
So this 5,000 you got in professional services, where's that?
That is the money that's supposed
subcontract.
to go to the, doc,
Public
essentially,
health
public
officer.
health officer.
Okay.
What Doc Campbell has done for years, that nobody else has wanted to do.
Well,
We
we
didn't do it
haven't-
last year.
We haven't given anyone else an opportunity.
Well, we did publicize one year,
And then there was.
and then there was some
upset.
scuttlebutt.
Right, so
Created some
we
issues.
didn't allow.
Corey had me go look and see, if I knew, he asked me if I knew how much he'd been paid and if that there's ever any wages, so I went clear back in our old system, as far back as I could go in there and got a picture from Corey. It started out at like 39,000 and then went to 40 something, and it's been 5,000 probably the last 5-6 years. 17, 18 we didn't pay, and we haven't paid this year.
It's generally paid in June, so we could, depending on what happens with all this. We were asked not to last year, so.
So that's where with everything, I told my SIP we were told not to. But it was typically paid in February of every year. When I looked in history, between end of January and February every year, that's when it was paid.
Okay.
That's why that one meeting, we needed to have a health meeting, discuss it.
Well, we do, and that's after that scuttlebutt is when we started paying December, so it was written 2 years ago. But yeah, we'll just need to rework that.
So that's what that's for. And it's still sitting there. I'm not sure who made the claim in the past. I didn't pull anything.
We've gotten an invoice.
Okay. See, I don't think we got one last year.
Uh-uh.
We haven't gotten one to my knowledge this year.
And, yeah, so, sorry.
That's why that's still there.
All right.
So that's kind of a cushion, although not a lot. And then the environmental health, that one is the sanitarium. And she's got a few line items that she's over. She's not over her budget, but she's right on target. So we'll have to kind of watch some of those. And Sarah quit. Her husband had health issues, so she doesn't have Sarah helping her with any of that stuff anymore. But I'm not sure how that will affect her wages a little bit. It'll help, I think. And so far this year, we haven't had, anything for the others. Except veterans, and we've done pretty good with the veterans this year. It's been a quieter year so far. That could change with this cold weather, but.
So explain to me what the mental health, how are they accessing it?
This isn't the local advisory committee. This is,
Center for Mental Health.
yes.
Okay.
That's the regional one, there's 11 counties, and we all pay a percentage. So our fee annually is generally 5,300, 5,600, something like that. And so that's what that
So
is.
it's something that you pay something every year.
Coming up very soon.
Okay.
You haven't received anything, have you? I haven't either. I'm gonna start going those meetings, so that'll help us to kind of know what's
We
going
try to
on.
watch, but
For a short time, they were taking that automatically from our entitlement share, so we weren't seeing the money. Now, last session, they changed it to where we actually do a claim and check again. And that's the money pays for someone actually coming to this office every Friday, and they see clients here.
And is that going on? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, I guess they're pretty
Is
full.
it?
we started people coming in here. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's pretty quiet, because Fridays are pretty quiet. You come in the back door here, because they want to keep it private.
Oh, where's this office at?
Right there.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So this is the waiting room, the door's closed, and then the store's closed, so it's double protection. Yeah. I had thought they had left, and they said, no, we're booked, so, yeah.
I should know that because after Robert comes down here, he comes up and sees me.
Oh, all
I
right.
should have known that. Yeah. He has to see them.
Indigent burial is one that's been kind of, unfortunate in a lot of different ways. We don't fund a lot, we don't have a lot. We've had maybe 2 in the last 5 years, and the sheriff's office will direct us on if this is truly an indigent burial, or if this is a case where somebody just doesn't want to take the bill. And we rely heavily on these guys
Yeah.
to direct us.
It really, Gwen's really good about searching out and finding somebody. He's worked pretty hard on the 2 that we weren't able to find anyone. And we worked out a pretty good deal with this, to do it as cheap as possible and be still respectful to that person. So we got a lot of people that ask for it, but we don't do it unless we can't find any family members. So you just can't afford to not do that. So I think we have a pretty good policy set to keep that the way it is.
Yeah, thanks for that. And we have 2 cemeteries with plots set up.
We were working with, I think the last one, Dana was still here, but Dana, from Department of Health and stuff like that, Eric being the chaplain, so it's good just sort of for your information.
Debbie, will you explain roads, mills, and separate report you do, all that good stuff?
Road gets its own mills, it gets its own valuations from the Department of Revenue. And so their values can differ. A lot of it has to do with the miles in the county that has to be maintained. Some gravel, some paved. So it has its own fund, its own budget, not subject to the floating mills.
You said they have different values? There's mills that have different values?
Yes. Yeah. So like soil conservation district has different values based on those in the district and the value of their land and all that stuff that Department of Revenue assigns a value. And then comes up with a taxable value in their formulas. So road's a separate one, soil conservation, mosquito, schools, weed has its own. And then some of the Three Forks mosquitoes and fire has its own, some of the stuff in Three Forks, based on the value of the land that they're looking at. So they're not part of the county-wide. So he has a separate budget to maintain, Mary has a separate budget to maintain and monitor with road. And then solid waste is kind of the same thing, their assessments. So she gets separate stuff to monitor outside of. So when I send stuff to the state, their tax levy requirements that you'll see when you read the budget thing has a different breakdown that we monitor and track. So it's separate. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's perfect. So work comp under Public Works Administration, 333%, is that an error?
Well,
I like your size.
I'm not sure. We were looking at that, Michelle and I were looking at that yesterday, trying to figure out what's going on here.
Okay, so you can look into that?
Yeah. We went through and split hers up. I don't know why that particular one, unless the formula, which I sometimes have trouble with Excel,
And the thing is,
caused me troubles.
it may be putting her up because she is public works, even though she's administration.
And that's some of the setup stuff I have to go look at too. Because we're splitting her between third road, third solid waste. The other third is split, 25% of the third goes to weed and then, or 75% of the third goes to weed and then the 25% goes to mosquito, is how we've got it set up to charge. But if it's not gonna work that way, then we'll have to look at it next year.
Okay.
But I know we've had some issues with the solid waste and how this is split up, that I think I'm gonna have to, I'm noticing that maybe Black Mountain can help me with,
Okay.
and that might be.
But we're not the only ones doing this, so there's a formula somewhat set up already. Lewis and Clark isn't on Black Mountain, but Nancy could be a resource.
And it could have just been how the decimal places carried over in the worksheet, and I didn't budget enough. Yeah, when this stuff comes up, I find these things that,
It's not a huge worry at all, especially when you look at the, bottom line for road, it's only at 42%.
no, but it's still a
Sure.
mistake that shouldn't be there.
The, bridge, we used to do, put about 10,000 a year from PILT into a CIP for bridges. Probably something we should be thinking about again.
I think when we worked on budget, that was set aside because, between Dana leaving and Mary starting, it was implied or inferred that there might be some work on one of our bridges. But I don't know if it was part of the grants that they charge it to instead, or if they just haven't gotten to it yet.
And with Mike's grant writing, we really benefited.
Is that bridge, is that for the region that we're not involved
Might have been,
Could have been, yeah.
some of it, I don't know, yeah.
in? Supposed to be 5,000 put into a study, now they're not moving the bridge, so it's not gonna be a one time. So now there'll be some approach work done, but as far as the main work on the bridge, we're not gonna be involved, because we're not gonna be taking it all. That was the last discussion.
Local, the bridges down here, like.
Yeah, it's on the very, very end, it's called the Meridian Bridge.
Yeah.
Comes across and then it goes into Willowbrook.
Oh.
Well, it's on it, comes in and takes a corner, now they're gonna leave that corner, but they're gonna change the arc of the bridge because they would have moved it where they wanted to, they're gonna lay out in Dodge Street. So it comes in. So where does the, our Barca, the new gas tax, money, where does that go?
That is a new fund, 2821, I think is what I set up.
That-
So it's right next to the other one. I know we've got something that we're gonna get it. I haven't,
48,000, we did check a copy of it.
yeah, it's 2821. It's the special Barca gas tax. And when I did the budget, we had something that said we could get 22,000 this year. And I don't see that it's, well, we've gotten it.
We just got a letter Monday that we got it in for 4 to 8. It's a little bit more than expected.
Okay. Then I don't think we've gotten it yet.
I think that the 22 was last year's
Yeah, yeah.
quarter of the allocation.
That might be,
And this year's is split as well. Next year should be fully funded.
I know there was criteria you guys had to meet before you could get it, and so I don't think we anticipated, we didn't know what to budget. That's easy to fix once we get it with an amendment, receiving authority, once we know. Because like, you know, we're picking a point in time, and that stuff is in the future, we can't, just like pill, if we don't get it till June 30th, how do you budget for it to come a year later? So we try to keep it conservative and hope we get more. But at least we get